Hello everyone. I just wanted to do a video really just to tell you about the podcast that I'm doing right now and what I'm trying to do with it. It's called the Love Fruit Podcast. It's a podcast that's meant to be for raw vegans and fruitarians. And I'm starting to interview a lot of people in the raw food community. I'm really passionate about the community. Someone said to me recently I was like a historian, or I had a historian's outlook on the raw food movement. And I do. I really love the whole story of it, piecing together all these different individual characters that played this role in this really unusual and weird but yet totally common sense idea coming out. And it's such a fascinating story, the idea that the entire human population is kind of in denial about the idea that cooking food isn't really the best idea, and that we have all these healthier raw foods that we're just kind of leaving sitting there that are clearly healthier and better for us to eat. But we're so addicted to these other foods that as a society we've just got the blinders on. But there's some people that manage to step out of that matrix, just like in the film The Matrix. Like that is the actual matrix. The actual matrix is that society is blindly following all these different ideas, concepts. I don't think it's about love and peace and control from the government. I don't really think about it like that. I think about it more. I think one of the few real genuine conspiracies in life, it's not really a conspiracy, but one of the few things where society is completely wrong and going in the wrong direction is the nutrition thing, is the food thing. And it's because of this denial that comes from addiction, this incredible psychological denial that comes from a massive amount of addiction to all these foods. And that's all fine. Like I'm not I'm not trying to be shameful or shaming people or whatever. I'm not trying to make any big point with that, but you can step out of that matrix of that weird, and it's not a human being that's controlling you, it's addictive foods controlling the whole population as a mass. You know, when these conspiracy theorists talk about the government doing things to make people unhealthy and unhealthy this and that and manipulative stuff and boards of people, tables of old white men controlling the world and telling everyone what to do and all that stuff. Like, I don't know how much of that is really, I don't know how much power they really have. If they decided all of a sudden they wanted the world to go fruitarian, they don't have the power to do that. They can't, or vegan even. It happens slowly. You can't just force people overnight to change things. The vegan movement, the vegan thing is really growing. The raw vegan thing will probably grow alongside that in a way, but people's attitudes and desires and feelings and tastes and all that, that's stuff that no one really is forcing on anyone. These have been established over generations, over tradition and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, you can step outside of the matrix, but I don't know why I got to talking about all that. But the podcast, people in the raw food movement, it's fascinating that people have been able to do that. And why have they done that? And how did they get there? And how did people in the 1920s do a raw food diet or whatever? Even though it wasn't quite popular back then, but there was still raw food restaurants back then. There was books about it. There was speakers talking about it. So it's just a fascinating thing to me that there's always been people that have worked this out and tried to do it. And I like, with my podcast, Love Fruit Podcast, to interview people that have played some role in the raw food movement. The first intention was to have just people that were 100% raw vegan. That was the first intention. And then I just started to think, well, anyone who's had some kind of connection to fruit, the raw food movement, in some way is interesting to me. So even people that don't describe themselves as fruit based or don't even, like, I'd be happy to speak to Brian Clement, who's almost completely anti-fruit, but he's a part of the raw food movement. The Hippocrates Health Institute is part of that history, going back to Anne Wigmore and all that kind of stuff. So I've been connecting with quite a few really amazing people from the history of the raw food movement that I've been interviewing over the last few weeks. And these will be coming out once a week. So the idea is that on a Monday, and maybe I'll change that. Maybe we should do twice a week. I don't know, but I kind of want enough time to kind of allow one podcast to get a bit of an audience and then move on to the next one the next week. I don't know. You can tell me what's the best thing to do if you like, but the idea is that on Mondays they'll go out, and you can find it on Spotify, Stitcher, iTunes, Google Podcast. You can find it on our website, fruitfest.co.uk/podcast. You can find it on YouTube. I'll sometimes put them on this channel and sometimes put them on the UK Fruitfest channel, probably as well. But really excited to get this out, and my main goal with interviewing these people is like, what was your journey? How did you end up at this position of doing a raw food diet when so few people do it? And your experience and the transition and the mistakes you made and all that. So I want to help people that are beginners, but for my own curiosity, I just like hearing I love the history of it. What were the events they were going to? What were the retreats they were going to? Who were the teachers? What were the books? Like Anne Osborne talks about, she went to a talk with a guy that was like a fruitarian guy when she started off. I think it was a guy called David something. Now that guy's not a fruitarian anymore. Not a raw vegan, I don't think. I don't think he's a vegan even. David Shelley. So she learned from she got inspired by a guy called David Shelley, and she went fruitarian. It's interesting to me, like, what was that meeting like? What talk did he give? What was he, and I think he had a book as well, and like, what was the book? And all that stuff's interesting to me. I'm just fascinated. But like, I remember being at the Danish festival and someone had a whole stack of like old magazines, raw food magazines, and I was like, I bought them all. I was like, I'm really interested in this stuff. Like, I just think it's fascinating, and I love the movement so much that that I've been fascinated by all that stuff. But yeah, the intention with the podcast, it won't just be 100% strict raw vegans. Although if you are that, I'm quite happy to interview you, even if you're not well known or have a following or whatever. But I've got some really great interviews coming up. I've done them recently. Some of them are really great. So I don't know if you can subscribe to the podcast on Apple iTunes. I think you can. On Spotify, I think you can follow it. And maybe on the other ones you can follow it as well. So go and find it, Love Fruit Podcast. We've got 23 episodes so far. The most recent one was Professor Rosalind Graham, and it's got a really great response already. So you can check that out. And going kind of further back, Chris Kendall last week, Marina Grubich the week before, and we've had Doug Graham, we've had Fully Raw Christina on it, we've had Melissa on it and her husband Nate, and some of you are going to be annoyed if you've been on it and I can't remember I can't remember every single person. Justin Lelia. So yeah, I want to be a bit more disciplined with it, get more out there, really enjoying it. So I just wanted to mention that podcast to you. Go and tell me what you think about it. Give me your suggestions. Who would you like to see interviewed? Do you want a different format? Would you like a discussion? Would you like debates between people that don't agree? If you want to be on it, then obviously let me know. Building a bit of a waiting list for people that to want to be on it. So it could be quite a few weeks or months before you get on it, but that's all good. So thank you very much for following this channel. Maybe consider going and listening to some of the podcasts, and hope you get something out of that. So the Love Fruit Podcast, find it online, and I'll see you in the next video.